Hey, folks, it's David, the Vintage Future. What's going on, guys? Hey, today I'm going to give you a review on this hat here. I usually do boots, but sometimes I do products or apparel, so I'm going to do this hat right here. And this is the Stetson Open Road. So first of all, if you want to know more about this hat, where should you go? Where should you buy it? The places you should get information and maybe purchase as well would be JJ Hat Center in New York City. That's probably the best place. Obviously, you can go to Stetson.com. Great place. You can go to Billy's Western Wear in Texas on their website. That's a great place. All these places have fantastic info. You can go to Boot Barn, go on their website. You know, all kinds of people have this hat. So it's not just them. Delmonico Hatters. I think they have this. If not, they have the stradaliner, which is more like a teardrop fedora. But anyways, all kinds of places like that. The guy on the internet for hats, the guy on YouTube is Kevin from JJ Hat Center. Check him out. Way more knowledge than me. He's got over 25 years experience in the industry. CJ Cook is another guy. He's an actor, but he has a great Instagram and YouTube channel. He reviews a lot of Red Wing boots, and he also does hats. And he's got some great stuff as well. He's got more hats than I do. I just have one. So those are some great places to go. The Fedora Lounge, it's an online forum. Anyways, so if you didn't already know that, great places, great resources. Okay, so let's jump into the Stetson Open Road. I'm super happy with this thing. I love it, but there's some things you need to know about it. So the basic deal is, first of all, this is a Western crossover hat. What does that mean? Well, Western crossover means this is essentially a fedora, right? Not a cowboy hat. And then it's got the Western feature of having the low cattleman's crease right here. So it looks like a cowboy hat, but it's small like a fedora, and it's got that soft crown and the soft brim of a fedora, whereas normally a Western hat would have a much larger brim, and Western felt's a little bit thicker and rougher, and so this brim on a Western hat would be fairly rigid. It'd be like thick cardboard, right? And they have to be that way, right? So that they can weather the elements if you're actually going to use the cowboy hat, and so that the brim doesn't droop. I mean, if you've got this big old 5-inch cowboy hat brim and it's not made out of pretty dense, hardy stuff, it's just going to start drooping on you, right? So this is basically a fedora with a crown that's shaped like a Western hat. Hence the name Western crossover. So it's got that fedora brim. It's got some snap to it. You can do the front or the back down or up, you know. Or just wear it up like me, or F Troop. I don't know if you ever watched that super old show. Yeah, cool deal. So that's the hat, the Stetson Open Road. Now, Stetson. What is Stetson? Why does everyone make a big deal out of Stetson? In case you don't already know. Well, Stetson, John B. Stetson, 150 years ago, roughly, he made the cowboy hat. So in the same way that John Ford made the automobile as we know it, and the Wright brothers made the airplane as we know it, the cowboy hat was invented by John Stetson. So these are still made in the USA. The factory is in Texas. That's pretty cool. And yeah, it's the original cowboy hat. So you want the real deal, Stetson. Now they're owned by Resistol now, I think, but still Stetson's the name in the game. So what else? Well, okay, things that you need to know about the Stetson Open Road. First of all, there's a difference between the Western versions of the Open Road and the dress versions of the Open Road. This isn't abundantly clear to everybody or from every vendor, okay? So this is the 6X. If you see X's with it, with a number, 6X, 20X, 100X, that means it's a Western felt, okay? And if you don't see that, if you see names just like straight up just Open Road, or you see a name that's Open Road Royal Deluxe, that's a dress hat, okay? It doesn't mean they can't cross over. You use your things how you want. Totally cool, right? We all have the right to do that. If you want to take your dress hat and go wear it to pull your weeds in your backyard, just because you like your hats to be a little softer, that's up to you. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Or if you like to use a thicker, rougher Western felt as more of a dress hat, totally up to you. That's totally, yeah, it's your prerogative, right? You can do what you want. It's your stuff, right? But just so you know what the classification is, a Western felt. Now this is not a hardcore Western felt, but a Western felt's going to be a little bit rougher to the touch, the feel. The hand is going to not be quite as soft. It's not rough like sandpaper, but it's just not quite as soft as dress felt. And it's going to be a little thicker. It's going to have a little bit more stand-up rigidity to it. Okay, the brim and the crown. They also treat it to make sure that it's a little more rigid. You know, so. I don't think they actually use hairspray, but typically after you own the hat, if you wanted to give it some rigidity, you would hit it with some hairspray or something like that, hat stiffener, right? So they make these stiffer. So everything's a little stiffer, okay? Now, if you were to, that's the 6X or 20X or 100X, which by the way, if you want the 20X or 100X, Billy's Western Wear in Texas, check out their website. Otherwise, if you go Stetson or JJ Hat Center, most of the other hatters out there, you're kind of stuck with the 6X as far as the Western ones go. So you want better than that. 20X for about $400. That's, you know, a lot of rabbit fur, but a lot of beaver fur too. Or 100% beaver fur, you know, that's like $800-900, the 100X. This is 6X, and that means that it's 100% rabbit felt. With maybe a little bit of beaver mixed in, but mostly rabbit felt and not wool. You need to know this. Anything 4X and below is got some sort of wool in it, like from sheep. If you want something that's a fur felt, which in a lot of ways is a better hat, higher quality, will last you longer, will last under the elements better, things like that. You know, shrinkage and stuff isn't as bad. It's a nicer, better hat if you're going to use this long term and use it a lot. You want to go above 4X, okay? Or actually 4X and above. So 4X and above. This is a 6X, so you're set. 100% rabbit fur. Okay, so that's Western felt. Now with the dress felt, it's going to be softer, okay? Softer, not flimsy per se, but not as much rigidity to it. And so it's going to be less resilient. Say you get a bunch of, Kevin talks about this, Kevin from JJ Hat Center. If you get a bunch of snow on here, or, you know, you get a bunch of rain or whatever, the dress felt's not going to stand up as much. It's not going to be flimsy. It's not like you can't wear it in the rain at all, but it's just not going to be as good. So what does that mean? Well, if you like luxurious, go with the Royal Deluxe or the Sovereign or the Royal Quality. You know, those are the dress felts. Open Road Royal Deluxe, something like that. If you're going to use this more outdoorsy, rough worker-like, you know, and all that, then get the cowboy in the 6X, 20X, 100X. Or maybe it's just about the feel. You know, maybe it's just I like softer hats or I like harder hats, right? Everyone's got a different take on that. Maybe you like it feels substantial because it feels thicker. Maybe you just like that, and you're going to use it with your suit. Well, that's fine. President Johnson used to do that. Harry Truman used to wear these. Most Texans who are statesmen wear something like this, right? Or if you pull up to a car lot in the middle of Texas, got their suit on, their cowboy boots, and one of these. State trooper, something like this. You know, it's a very common hat. So you just take that and you do what you want with it. Do what works for your style. But that's the difference between the dress felt and the Western felt. So now another thing that I'm glad I researched was the sizing on this thing. Okay, so I'm a size 59. I'm a size 7 3/8. It's the same thing. One's metric, one's not. Metric makes way more sense, by the way. So if I take this tape measure here and I go to the centimeter side and I measure all the way around my crown, you know, like this, the circumference of my head, it's 59 centimeters. So I buy 59. Super straightforward, right? But if you want to do it the American way, I know there's a reason why they did this in the first place, but it just doesn't make as much sense for someone on the outside coming in. I measure around my crown and it's 23 1/8, which translates to a hat size of 7 3/8. Okay, so that's confusing. If that's not confusing, I don't know what it is, or I don't know what is. But anyways, so that's my size. And to give you an idea of how this fits, it's super subjective. This is going to help some of you, not others. This is a 4.5 inch crown with a 2 3/4 inch brim here. Okay, how does it fit on me? Well, like I said, I'm 23 and an eighth around the crown. This is not the right way to measure a hat, but I'm just trying to give you something to hang your hat on. In case you want to size. Okay, so if I measure like this, it's like 10 and a quarter. If I measure like pretty much from ear to ear, okay? If I measure from right between my eyes to the back of my head where that little nub is on the back of your skull, if I measure over like this, it's 14 inches. You know, obviously all this is give or take an eighth of an inch or whatever, because it's hard to get these measurements exact. So measuring those three measurements, 23, 10 and a quarter, and 14 on my head with my crown, this hat fits perfect, okay? It ends right above my ears where it's supposed to. In the creases for the cattleman's crease, I can feel the top of my skull right there. And the top of my skull's right here. So if you're a tall crown, like I measured 10 over this and 14. Let's say you measure, say you're also 7 and an eighth, or sorry, say you're also a 7 and 3/8 or a size 59, and you measure like 16 this way, and you measure like 12 this way, that means you got a tall crown. This you're gonna have to reshape just a little bit. Check out Kevin from JJ Hat Center. He's got a few videos on how to get your Stetson Open Road to fit right if you got a taller crown, okay? So mine bottoms out, or tops out, right where it's supposed to. Like by the time my head touches the top of the hat, the brim's right where it should be. Now if you got a shorter head than me, so I'm like, again, I'm like 10 and a quarter and 14. So say you're like 12 and 9 inches. Well, then you're gonna you're gonna need a tighter fit. Don't size down, but I'm just saying get like those hat sizing bands, and make sure you get your tight fit, because the hat's gonna have this tendency to want to like push down, and like the brim's gonna hit your ears and push your ears down. That's not gonna look good, right? Because the top of your head's not holding the hat up. Or you know, maybe you're my size, but you just like the crown to be a little taller. You don't want it to touch the top of your head. Well, maybe this is not a hat for you. Anyway, so I was just trying to give you an idea of like what the fit is like. For me, it's like perfect, but for a lot of others, maybe not so much. So another thing is the color, okay? Silverbelly, it's really hard to peg the color. There's a lot of conflicting information out there. I'm gonna do my best to explain to you what is this color Silverbelly, okay? To understand the color, you first have to understand what Silverbelly is, how it's constructed, how it's made, because it's not really made like all other hats. And once you understand that, what I say after that will make a lot more sense. And this is why a lot of people get the color wrong. So you look at all the pictures on the internet and they all look different. One hat looks a little pink and they say it's Silverbelly. Another one looks silver and it says it's Silverbelly. One looks white and they say it's Silverbelly. Another looks, you know, almost gray or ivory, and they all say it's Silverbelly. And it is. It's the same hat. Why is that? How can that be? Well, here's how Silverbelly is made. Whereas most hats, like I had a Premier stradaliner from JJ Hat Center that I tried out, and I had a natural colored stradaliner, regular stradaliner from Stetson.com. You know, and I've seen a fawn colored, you know, Stetson Open Road. You know, with those, they essentially just dye the felt, okay? And so everything's a uniform color. You know, years ago when they made Silverbelly, they wanted it to be this really light color. And so they wanted to leave the fur, in many ways, just kind of the way it was, in this lighter color. But the problem was, a lot of times it would be blotchy. So you take the light fur from these animals and you put them all together, because that's how they make fur felt, right? They take the fur, and whether by hand or with a machine, you know, they just rub it together super hard and fast, and eventually it all just gets like stuck together and becomes felt. And that's what that is. Right, so they do that with the light fur from this animal, the rabbit, and then they got the hat. But then the problem is there's these natural splotches and blotches everywhere. And it just makes it look like you have this dirty hat, but you have a brand new hat. So nobody wants to look like they have a dirty hat. So to give it this light color, but to be uniform, instead of just like bleaching it or dyeing it, and they could have done that, what they decided to do is powder it. So they basically permeate this thing with powder, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it on the video here, but if I were to like slap this brim, you'll see all this white powder just kind of go off like, I don't know if you saw that. I just saw a ton of powder just go flying, okay? Well, that is the white, it's an off-white powder that they use to get this color, to give it a uniform look. This is unique to Silverbelly. Only Silverbelly hats, as far as I know, have that. Everything else is just a dye. So that has an advantage too of later when you have sweat marks or you get something on your hat, you can simply just kind of brush it and move that dust around, that powder, and it kind of covers it up or soaks up those stains. Or you can just leave it. And so that brings us to why the color is like it is. Well, the first reason every Silverbelly hat might look a little different up close or in pictures is because due to the powder content, it has sort of this uniqueness hat to hat and ends up with a patina over time. So in the same way with waxed flesh on boots, you know, the wax wears away, revealing the leather beneath. You know, the powder wears away or moves around and reveals the felt beneath. And so every hat's going to look a little bit different even when it's brand new, but especially after you use it and depending on whether or not you brush it. So if one guy has a Silverbelly hat for 5 years and he always uses it in a certain way, picks it up and does certain things, and now the powder's kind of worn away in some places or it's moved around and he never brushes it, it's going to look one way. It's going to have an emphasis on the color of the felt beneath. Whereas another guy brushes his all the time, so it's going to look more like the powder. One hat has more powder in it just by coincidence. Another hat has a little less powder in it by coincidence, because they make these hats, but there's variance, right? And so that explains why the color's so different. And let me explain the color though, because even though each hat with a Silverbelly is a little bit different, on the other hand, you still could categorize it. So let me categorize it for you. Let me explain it, essentially what it is. Okay, so from 10 feet away or across the street, every Silverbelly hat is essentially going to look the same, okay? It's basically a cream color, very light, okay? Not like dark cream, not tan. That's more like the fawn color that they have. It's not a brown by any means. It's not even an ivory. Ivory has more yellow in it, right? If you look at like ivory piano keys or something, it's really truly a cream color. And that's probably the best way to describe it. If you just want to describe it in one word, I'd say it's cream. So for all practical purposes, so functionally speaking, what other people see when they're looking at you when you're wearing it, if you're trying to think about how will this go with my wardrobe and my outfits, just think it's a light cream. It's basically an off-white, okay? So just think off-white, but not brilliant white, because that looks, you know, that looks like, oh, I'm wearing a zoot suit with my super shiny white hat. It's not that. It's a muted, dusty white, okay? So that's functionally. But when you look closer, and here's why the pictures are all different, when you look closer, there's a lot going on there, and it's because of that powder element, right? It's a very dynamic surface that you're looking at. It's like the surface of the moon, right? All the dust. It's not like looking at a dyed felt hat where it's all one color. It's like beneath you see the fur, which is basically a gray base. So that's why the Silverbelly, it's like a gray base. That's where the silver comes from. It kind of looks almost silvery, not metallic, shiny silver like a car, but just this silver gray base that shines through. Okay. Now next, you do have highlights of pink. All right, and almost like blush. So if you're familiar with women's makeup, what you would call a blush, it's got this like skin tone, cream, tan, skin tone, and the blush is this like very like subtle pink hue. It's got that beige, sort of that medium beige color, again, if you're familiar with makeup. All right, and then on top you have this off-white sort of tan cream colored powder, and so you got all that mixed in together, and some of it's shining through at different times depending on the lighting and stuff. So in some lighting you'll catch a lot of those pink highlights. You'll see a lot of pink. If you're in other lights, you'll see a lot of that gray coming through. It's going to look kind of silverish. And in other lights, it's just going to look like the surface powder, which is off-white, cream, tan, right? Or a combination of those things. And so, yeah, anyway, so that's the Silverbelly coat. So Silverbelly is actually a really good descriptor because that's kind of the color of like a lizard belly. Now, not all lizards have the same belly, but if you can imagine that, how like the belly of a lizard often is like, it's like this fleshy white color, right? But then there's like this silverish sort of tint to it, and then some kind of like pink highlights, because again, it's flesh. So yeah, white, silver, pink all kind of rubbed together, like on the belly of a lizard. That's this hat. Anyways, that's probably way too much information, but if one of you's out there wondering what Silverbelly is and you're about to pull the trigger on a hat, maybe that you'll appreciate that a lot. And so the last thing I want to say to contribute to this whole discussion about what is the Open Road is, what is it like in comparison to the stradaliner? Well, first of all, the stradaliner is more of a straight up fedora, okay? As I said, this is the 6X Open Road, so it's Western felt. There is a dress hat version of the Open Road, Royal Deluxe, or things like that. So that stradaliner is gonna be basically the same thing as the Open Road Royal Deluxe, except that one's shaped like a cowboy hat and the other one's not on the crown. Not exactly the same hat, but it's very close. So I'm going to talk about the differences. So first of all, as I said, it's a straight up fedora. The stradaliners are. That means it's soft dress felt. You notice that in the brim. The brim's just a little thinner, not as rough. It's a little bit more flimsy, and you can tell up here too. So if I pinch these ridges here on the cattleman's crease, it's pretty thick and it's soft. Like I can pinch it, but it's got some stand up to it. It's got some recovery of shape. Whereas the dress felts on the dressy version of this or the stradaliner, you pinch that and it feels like you're pinching just thick, soft, luxurious cloth. It's just very soft. It wants to mold. It wants to form to what you're trying to do with your hand, right? So very pliable. So that's the felt. And then the brim on a stradaliner, it's a fedora brim, straight up. This is like a 2 3/4 inch brim, and those are 2.5 inch brims, first of all, so they're a little smaller on the stradaliner. But then also, it's more like a bowl. So if you set these side by side, you'll notice that this brim here on the Open Road, it turns up a little bit, but it's not like the stradaliner, which turns up almost like a bowl. It just goes straight up. I had the Premier stradaliner and a normal stradaliner at one point, and that's how that was. Okay, so it just didn't fit my style as much, so that's why I don't have those anymore. There was nothing wrong with the hats. And then, of course, there's the teardrop shape of a stradaliner. That's another difference. I noticed that they fit about the same, too. So, by the way, if you're worried about the crown being different, I believe, I might have misquoted this earlier. This is a 4 1/4 inch crown, and the stradaliner is a 4 1/2 inch crown. That's barely a difference at all. And they needed that taller crown so that they can get the teardrop in there. So what that means is that they're the same. So this one fits me perfectly, like I said. My top of my head's right here. Well, the stradaliner is the same, and it ends right where it should, right above my ears. So that's kind of the difference between the two. Yeah, the vibes I get from that stradaliner are more like, it could be even 1950s, Frank Sinatra, kind of like, I'm a crooner. It could be like, I'm a blues guitarist or a jazz guitarist. I play in a coffee house. It could be 1950s. I'm just chilling at the loading dock with my buddies smoking a cigar, right? That kind of thing. It looks a little more hipster nowadays. So if you're like, I don't know, Bruno Mars or something like that, stradaliner. Or you're just, wearing a suit. You can wear it with your Tommy Bahama, Hawaiian shirt. So that's kind of how I view that. Whereas the Open Road has that kind of Western flair to it, but not too Western, okay? The Open Road's not like a straight up cowboy hat. Yeah, a real cowboy hat's got the big brim. So anyways, that's the difference between the stradaliner and the Open Road. So, that's my take on the Stetson Open Road. I love it. It's a great hat. It's broken in well. It comes in a oval shape here. So it depends on the shape of your head. My head is pretty oval shaped to begin with. So what ended up happening is I had to wear it for a while, and it broke in, which means this stretched this way just a little bit, right? Just a little bit. And I ended up putting this little leather strip in here underneath the sweatband to make it just a little bit tighter so it doesn't blow off my head in the wind. So if you're a 23 1/8 crown measurement, you can get a 7 3/8, and it's going to be a little big, which is good. You want that, because if the hat ever shrinks in storage or something, you'll still be okay. I could wear a 7 1/4, but that'd be too small, and if it shrunk, then it'd be too small, and I'd have to get stretched. And it's not good to stretch a hat, Kevin says. Kevin from JJ Hat Center. So I put that in there, and now it fits perfect. Nice silk on the inside. This leather, by the way, is very, very soft. This is not a hard band. Some cowboy hats, it's very, very hard leather. This is very soft leather. It feels like almost like kip lining you would have in a boot or a nice shoe. The tag, the sizing tag, fell off. It's just like glued onto the inside of the sweatband there, where the ribbon is. It just like fell off, which is fine with me. But if that kind of thing bugs you, then just know that. The ribbon, they put ribbons there so you can find the back of your hat in the dark. A lot of the gold stamps right here that said like, it said Stetson Open Road 6X here, and it says made in the USA here, and John B. Stetson Company and all that. Like a lot of that's already starting to wear off with wear, so that doesn't bug me, but you know, for what it's worth. And then on the inside, there's the inspection label. So some dude named El Romero, he did a great job. He inspected this, and it's a nice hat. It says, I personally checked this hat. Hope you enjoy it. As I look at the stitching on this hat, it's pretty good. I mean, you know, I'm sure it could be cleaner. It's pretty stinking clean, to be honest. It could be even cleaner, though. There's just a couple little things here and there, like a loose thread here hanging out or something like that. But you know, I'm not expecting anything better than this unless it's like $1,000 hat, which I am not going to buy. So this is plenty good for what I want it for. So anyways, it's a solid hat. It's really good. I would say this the brim. You know, let's just measure it here while we're here, in case you're trying to get a feel for it. Okay, so it's 1/8 of an inch thick. That doesn't sound like a lot, but go look at a measuring tape. The brim is 1/8 of an inch thick, and it's got this binding on the edges here. It's got the bound edge. Yeah, 1/8 of an inch thick. So that's pretty thick felt. Okay, and when you squeeze it, it's dense enough to where you don't feel it giving. Hey, one more thing about this hat, guys, before I finish up this review. So this is for anyone who's not super familiar with hat brims. So I just wanted to clarify. This is a great all-around hat. You can work in it, you can dress it up, you can dress it down, you can take it places. It travels well, other than the fact that it's not crushable. You can't twist it up and roll it up in your pocket, but it travels pretty well. You know, and it's not very cumbersome. However, as you can see on my face, this is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There's sun on my face. There's been a few situations where in the morning hours or the afternoon hours, I get a sunburn on my face, on my nose and stuff like that. Because this 2 3/4 inch brim, like most fedoras, most Panama hats, you know, it's just not going to give you maximum coverage. If you want maximum coverage, if you were concerned with skin cancer or sunburns, you know, even they're a little more cumbersome, sometimes stylistically they're a little harder to pull off. What you really want, guys, is you want that Western wear. You want that big Western cowboy hat with the 5-inch brim, or you want a big plainsman's hat, like a big wide flat brim, you know, something like that, or sombrero. Something that's really going to give you good coverage. This is not going to do it all the time. So generally speaking, this is a great all-around hat. It's going to serve any purpose you could have for it. But if your concern is getting maximum shade, right, this just isn't going to bring it. So like I said, if you're not familiar with hat brims, I wanted to say this just so you don't buy this thinking, oh dude, this hat's going to be great and I'm never going to be in the sun anymore. Well, as you can see right now, you will be in the sun. You can flip it down if you want. It helps a little bit for sure, but it's definitely not going to match what a 5-6 inch cowboy hat brim or something like that can do. But there's a lot of other benefits I think that outweigh that. You just have to know that with this, if you don't want sun on your face, you're gonna have to flip the brim down, or keep your head down a little like this. If you're doing a task outside where you're looking down anyways, so say you're reading, chilling on the beach reading or something, looking down, or maybe you're doing yard work in your hat. If this is more of a work hat for you, you're looking down, well, your face is gonna be covered anyways. So there's workarounds, but this is not the end-all be-all of hats. In fact, I don't think really any hat is. So, okay? So anyways, this is not the end-all be-all of hats, and not really any hat out there is. But I would say that this, as far as the brim size goes, is a great all-purpose hat, great all-purpose fedora. This is it looks like a Western hat, but really it's a fedora. Fedora just means basically soft felt hat, in a Western style. So, hope that helps you guys. Hope it keeps you from getting accidental sunburns by buying the wrong hat for the job.